Some people that struggle with anxiety have found that none of the traditional methods seems to work all that well. They've tried the medications, they've tried meditation, they've tried changing their diet, tracking their sleep habits. Nothing really seems to really help reduce their feelings of anxiety. And for some of these cases, their anxiety is also very physical. It feels like their heart's racing or their blood pressure is high, their hands are clammy, they just kind of feel on edge or buzzy a little bit, even though the situation around them may not call for that kind of feeling. Well, in some of those cases, the reason they're having these anxious, anxiety kind of feelings is because there's a neurological problem rooted in the upper neck. And that's the first thing that we test for. Now, a lot of cases of anxiety are because of some traumatic life event, and they really should be dealt with, through traditional methods, whether it's psychology or therapy or something like that. But there are some cases where none of that seems to work. And then come to find out, there's a really powerful relationship between the upper neck and the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system is what controls your fight or flight, or your sympathetic response, or your rest and digest, or your parasympathetic response. And in the cases that we help that have anxiety, they're stuck in this fight or flight type of mode with their nervous system because of a problem in the upper neck. The switch between fight or flight and rest and digest is actually rooted in the nervous system at the level of the brainstem. And there's a really unique relationship between the upper neck and brainstem function. The top two bones in the neck, the top two vertebrae in the spine, atlas and axis, or C1 and C2, if those bones and those joints get stuck, they can lock somebody's neurological function in a fight or flight state called sympathetic dominance. And in that case, the person's going to feel very anxious. It's a kind of a physical sort of anxiety that shows up with their chest tension or breathing, or they just kind of feel on edge, and nothing really seems to help. No matter how much sleep they get, they wake up feeling this way, or the slightest little trigger in their environment brings it on, or sometimes out of nowhere they feel this kind of response. So the first thing that we do is we look at this upper neck neurological connection using infrared thermography. Thermography is a very safe, non-invasive, non-provocative test, which means it's not going to make anything worse just by testing it. If we find a thermographic pattern which tells us there's a breakdown in that communication between the upper neck and the brainstem, then we do some additional testing, looks very closely at the upper neck. We do some neurological and orthopedic tests and take some specialized x-rays called biomechanical x-rays. Now, these aren't x-rays that you just simply get from like an urgent care center or traditional medical doctor where they take an x-ray from the side and from the front. We're taking x-rays, we include those views, but we also include views that look at the head and neck with the head being tilted side to side. We're trying to find if there's a vertebra in the upper neck, atlas or axis, C1 or C2, that are stuck. If the joints in the upper neck aren't moving normally, that's what's going to irritate the brainstem and potentially lock somebody in this sympathetic dominant state or being stuck in fight or flight. So by very carefully and very precisely adjusting that stuck joint in the upper neck, which is what's called upper cervical chiropractic care, very different than general chiropractic care. These adjustments are very safe. They don't have to happen on every visit. They're given only precisely where they're necessary in the upper neck, not everywhere. And they only happen on visits where they need to happen based on the objective testing that we do. But by doing this process repeated over the course of a little bit of time, a lot of patients find that their body just kind of finally just begins to relax and settle. They feel like they shift from this fight or flight state back into a rest and digest state. Now, being able to adapt back and forth is necessary. That's actually healthy. You want to be able to get into a fight or flight state when necessary, but those situations are usually pretty rare, not very common. Most of the time we should be, just living and navigating our life in pretty much a rest and digest or a parasympathetic state. So by adjusting an upper neck that's stuck, we restore the body's ability to adapt. So now they're not permanently stuck in rest and digest either, because that would also be a problem. They're able to shift back and forth. And your physiology, how your body's organs and muscles and glands and tissues and subsystems like digestion and blood pressure and cardiovascular systems, how those systems function are also tied into this fight or flight or rest and digest systems. Your autonomic nervous system controls all that, which is why people stuck in fight or flight or sympathetic dominance also feel this sort of background buzz in their feeling. Their digestion is off, their sleep cycles are off. The muscles are often tense as well because their body's literally preparing for a fight or flight situation. So that's why the anxiety that's rooted in the upper neck also feels very physical. It's not just a mental or emotional experience, it's a somatic experience as well. So upper cervical chiropractic is a niche within chiropractic care. It is not general chiropractic. We're not adjusting all over the place on every visit. We only focus on the upper neck. We only make adjustments when necessary based on x-rays and objective neurological testing. And in many cases, patients finally get that level of relief and relaxation they've been looking for. If you have any other questions, you can look for more information on this website, sourcepointcare.com. If you're looking at this video on YouTube, you can leave me a question in the comments or the dialog box below, and I'll get back to you as fast as I can. And hopefully if you need help, you can reach out to us, and hopefully we'll have the answer you've been looking for. All right, take care.